So this is the Grand Rounds and they are a net operating today, transmitting out of Hawthorne, Florida, JAA4FL at the microphone. Glad to have everybody with us. We're making a YouTube recording here so the entire world can participate through, at least or listen to our roundtable discussion here. Radio conditions are pretty poor. We're doing a Zoom simulcast. Thank you for those that are here with us. So ecotourism and health, wellness gains from sustainable travel and nature is extremely important for many reasons. We're going to talk about that here today, and thank you for everybody that's here with us. So as part of the agenda here, we're going to talk about understanding what ecotourism is, the physical health benefits of ecotourism for visitors, the mental and emotional health advantages, benefits for the locals, some of the science and research challenges and considerations, and then some concluding comments. But understanding ecotourism, and we'll define it in just a moment here, we do have PowerPoint prompts for the 20-meter net. And if you go to healthcarehams.org, and you go to the entry page, and you scroll down in the right column, you'll find the slides for today posted. So you can watch along if you're on 20 meters. But this particular images that I have that I'm talking about were from Costa Rica when we're in ecotourism there. A lot of people come to Costa Rica to do many different things. One of them is bird watching. And one morning I sat up at about 5 in the morning when it was getting light, and I think we had 15 different species of birds that were identified by a bird recording app just by the audio of the birds. And that's just in one little area where we're staying. But ecotourism in definition and the key principles are its responsible travel to natural areas that conserve the environment, support the local well-being, and includes interpretation and education. The key principles are minimizing the impact and respect wildlife and habitats by building environmental and cultural awareness through learning, and creating positive experiences for visitors and host communities. So this supports conservation through funding and responsible practices. And why does this matter? Why does it matter? Because you want sustainable development and long-term conservation outcomes. You want positive outcomes. It has to be planned. And if you don't, you'll be subject to limitations and issues. And we'll talk about some of those during this discussion here today. So ecotourism versus conventional tourism, what's the difference? What are the advantages? On the pros, it promotes sustainability, supports local communities, and preserves the cultural heritage. There's also a lower carbon emission per visitor than they would usually have. And also, in conventional tourism, though, in contrast, the pros there is that mass accessibility, economic growth, and well-developed infrastructure, often more affordable for travelers because it's so accessible. When we're talking about ecotourism, many of those areas are a little harder to reach, and being that they're not the high volume of visitors can be more expensive. So the cons of the ecotourism: limited infrastructure, potentially higher costs, restricted number of visitors to protect the sensitive environments. Because, after all, if we damage the environment, that's not ecotourism, is it? But conventional tourism, of course, can cause habitat destruction, and it's a less controlled way. Cultural erosion, higher ecological footprints, lower community satisfaction rates. Much different animal. Some examples of ecotourism destinations. I had just gotten back from 2 weeks in Costa Rica, and I'd done an educational-based trip, Rhodes Scholar, and got a chance to really get ingrained in some of these concepts. And in Costa Rica, people visit for many different reasons, but realize they have rainforest there as they do in other countries, and there's a rich biodiversity supported by strong conservation policy. And ecotourism there contributes to 5% of its GDP. And their currency, their different bills, and 4 of them in particular that I focused on when I was there, 5 mil 5,000 colones, their currency, has a monkey on it. I think looked like oh, I'm at a loss for the word right now. A capuchin monkey. The 10,000 note had sloth on it. Um, there's a 1,000, which I guess another note that has a deer, they're one of their national animals, and another has a hummingbird. So it's very ingrained in society. They're very proud of what they do, and they're very focused. So it's a good one to go to for an introduction to ecotourism if you're here in the United States. It is fairly close by. Galapagos Islands is another area. Pristine habitats with strict management, guided access helps protect endemic species. Kenya, the national parks, they limit the number of visitors, regulate tours to help balance wildlife with habitat conservation. There's many others. I was talking to someone on digital radio this morning from Cape Town, South Africa, and they have ecotourism as well. And of course, many other areas that you might be familiar with. I've got KD5QHV with us. Let me pause on 20 meters here. Do we have any further check-ins in 20 meters? Make your call to Whiskey Bravo Delta. Okay, we're also on Zoom here as a simulcast. I'm making a YouTube recording. So for those of us that are here, I'll ask Mary and Chip and Stuart and Barry here, particularly. What areas have you been to that you would consider to be ecotourism? Let me start with WB1FFI. Go ahead, Barry.
Yeah, hi, thank you. Yeah, it's been a long time. I think we took a trip to Alaska around 2000 or so, and we did a lot of land-based touring. Took helicopters up to glaciers, and it was just beautiful, pristine. You can see the blue in the ice, the silence, because it was above the point where birds fly, and it's just one of those rare places on Earth where you can experience silence when you just everybody's quiet and the helicopter motor is off. It's just an amazing experience. And there were a number of other side tours that were great. I just can't recall them right on the spot. Another trip we took just a few years ago was we went up to Banff and Jasper, Alberta. This was thankfully before the terrible fires that took out a lot of the Jasper, Alberta area. So we were very lucky in that regard. And one late evening into the night, I took an opportunity to do astronomical viewing, which it's one of these light protected areas against light pollution. And we had very good instructors and taught us a lot about the sky and different ways they, can evaluate systems, stars, and constellations. So that was a very enjoyable trip. Again, we were on a glacier there too. It's just, I have to go back in my photographs to get my memory back, but it was enjoyable, and we look forward to doing more of that hopefully in the future. Thank you, Jay, for asking.
WB1FFI, Whiskey Bravo 5 Delta, AA4FL, Mike. And there's a lot of very popular tourist destinations, and you'd like to think that they're focused on ecotourism as well, taking advantage of the opportunity to have the visitors to affect the locals and improve life for everybody. And of course, if you're a tourist destination and you don't maintain that pristine nature, like Barry's talking about in Alaska, then you won't have a pristine destination anymore. So there are certainly some destinations that are very strict about that, and because they're a little less accessible. And there's many places in the world to visit, but it's at the end of the day, it's up to the locals to plan for the ecotourism to make sure the experience is an excellent one, and for the visitors, then they can entice more to come. So some places have such natural beauty, like Alaska, Banff, as Barry mentioned, that the visitors want to come there. But there's places that are a little harder to get to that the locals have to develop the ecotourism to attract individuals. Wouldn't necessarily be the first choice for destinations. For example, we'll talk about Costa Rica some more, but there's a difference between tourism to the rainforest and going to the beaches, the type of people that come. A lot of Europeans seem to come to the rainforest, whereas the beaches may not be the same composition or blend. So this is Whiskey Bravo 5 Delta of the Grand Mounds of the Internet. Do we have any additional check-ins on 20 meters at this time? Make your call. Nothing heard. Stuart, WA9ZPL, I know you're well traveled and hearing about some of your recent tourist destinations. It sounded like some of them might be ecotourism centric. Would you like to make some comments about your trip, Stuart? WA9ZPL, Whiskey
Yes, I would, but please verify that my mic is working.
QSL.
Okay, so yeah, Lannis and I have done a lot of ecotourism for many decades. And the example I want to mention is the Galapagos Islands. The Galapagos Islands is one of the most isolated group of islands in the world. It's off the coast of South America, not too far from Ecuador and Peru. And it's best known because Charles Darwin visited the Galapagos Islands as a young man and then went on to formulate the theory of evolution. And he did this by studying variations among birds and tortoises on the various islands. For example, he studied the finches in the different islands and saw that the beaks of the finches were shaped differently to be better suited for the food supply that existed on each island. When we were there, we actually saw some of these finches flying around. We had an excellent guide who explained to us that the government, which is actually the government of Ecuador, limits the number of tourists that can visit the Galapagos Islands. There's an upper limit, how many per year. And for most of the islands, humans are not allowed to stay there overnight. You can visit under strict guidelines. You can't spend the night. We had to go back to our ship. But unfortunately, whenever and this is the downside of ecotourism, whenever the number of tourists started to approach the maximum for the year, what the government would do was increase the maximum so that really the cap on tourist visits wasn't meaningful. And there's even a phrase among people who study ecology called over-visitation. I guess that's a word and not a phrase. That if you visit too much, or if you get too close to the wildlife when you visit, just the act of visitation can do harm. And the issue of tourist caps and the issue of over-visitation remains unresolved to this day.
Thank you, Stuart. WA9ZPL, AA4FL. Now, Stuart, that sounds like a very beautiful place. It's certainly on my short list of places to visit personally. When we talk about ecotourism, I imagine it probably helps Ecuador quite a bit. But, on the eco side of things, it's, get to support the locals as well. I mean, a lot of these destinations in ham radio, we try to go to for Rare DX. We don't get to help the locals because they're areas that aren't populated. And a lot of times on amateur radio, we can't even get on the islands because the birds are so well protected. They won't let humans interact with them. Places like, let's see, Howland. Oh gosh, there's so many of those islands, especially under American protectionists. Look how long it took to get on Navarro recently in the Caribbean. It should be very easy for the United States, but because of the bird population. And in other areas and the islands in the subantarctica, it's penguins and walruses. You just can't disturb them. So, Bernie, KD5QHV, you've traveled quite a bit and you're in the military. You've probably seen a lot of changes because some of the places you visited were heavily traveled by Americans. I wonder if, for example, those that were in Vietnam, what the differences might be now and if they're doing any ecotourism. Can you tell us anything, Bernie, that you might know about ecotourism? Let me turn it over to you, KD5QHV, AA4FL.
A4FL and the group K85QH. Good morning, Jay. Well, I can't tell you about Vietnam, but having been to Costa Rica like you, I can tell you that the first time you're introduced to the screaming monkeys, it's certainly an eye opener. We did that a number of years ago, and that was pretty entertaining. Of course, when you start looking at the Hawaiian Islands, there's certainly a lot of eco-sensitive areas in the islands that you really got to pay attention to. And then there were some of the places, things that are actually kind of funnish. We were in. I'm having a senior moment here. We're on one of the islands, and everywhere we looked, there were chickens and spit. So okay, so what's the deal with the chickens? And they said, oh well, there was a hurricane. Hurricane knocked down all the chicken coops. The chickens went out on the land, and that's where they stay today. So I mean, it was now that's more domestic than the other. But again, you've got all the birds and you've got all the other creatures that are on these islands that you might not see in other places. And you're right, people have to pay attention to what they're doing because one or two bad apples will spoil it for everybody. And the whole idea is to make things like that accessible so people can see them and can enjoy these things because they're not going to be there forever. And it doesn't take rocket science to figure that out. So I don't think I answered your question, but I certainly give a little bit of input, any interest. Back to you, Jay. KD5Q83.
Okay, KD5QH3, AA4FL, the mic for Whiskey Bravo 5 Delta for identification. Grand rounds in the air net. And before we ask some more participants about their travels in ecotourism, let me pause one here for 20 meters, additional check-ins. Make your call to Whiskey Bravo 5 Delta. Our net's open to all amateurs, and you're welcome to participate. Bill, I understand that you used to be a wildlife biologist in your younger age, KC9CS. Would you like to talk a little bit about some of your experiences with places where you may have participated in conferences about wildlife and where there might be some ecotourism discussion? Let me turn the mic to KC9CS.
Yeah, Jay, I posted up a minute ago on the chat box that I was in Ireland in 1979 as a member of the United States contingent for the International Wildlife Congress. We had 5 days of presenting papers on different wildlife topics, conservation topics, things like that. And then another 6 days of actually touring Ireland. And we went to some places where, unspoiled beauty, but, mostly ecological sites, conservation sites, areas where they brought in, exotic species to repopulate the island. But that was a lot of fun, and I would say, as an early ecotourism type of thing, um, that was great. And I've been to other places. A lot of them have been, here in the United States. As a biologist, um, I spent times up at the Kellogg Bird Sanctuary in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and we used to do every year different things, for conservation there. Uh, South Dakota, working on the upland game populations and pheasant and things like that. And then had a lot of work done with Canada geese and migratory waterfowl in northern Illinois and southern Wisconsin. So they haven't been so much out of the country, but a lot of them have been in-country type of things. And there's a lot of things that can be done right here in the States. So a lot of fun, though.
Hey, thank you, KC9CS, Whiskey Bravo 5 Delta for ID. That's a very important comment there, Bill, talking about the United States, because there are plenty of areas in the United States that aren't as frequented, that have a lot of natural beauty, and those communities can develop ecotourism in their own locales by taking advantage of the opportunity for people, attracting people to visit. There's always interest groups, and there's ways to promote yourself and do so in environmentally sensitive. And you talk about Ireland, I can't think of a better example of having areas of the country, because we all know that Ireland is a green community. Sorry for my Ireland pun, it's too late for St. Patrick's Day. I was in Costa Rica during St. Patrick's. So Mary AE4BX is with us. Mary, would you like to talk a little bit? Would you like to turn your mic on and tell us a little bit your travels, and you think any of them fit the bill for ecotourism?
Well, I've been to Alaska and Costa Rica also. I don't have anything to add to what's already been said. But one tour I took, I did a lot of astronomy for quite a few years, and the Atlanta Astronomy Club owns 40 acres of dark sky between Atlanta and Augusta, and we used to have star parties there. There was a naturalist that used to take us around and discuss nature and have walks during the day and during the night. And so one of the walks during the day, she passed this piece of stuff around, had a feather and some bones and things, and everybody's to guess what this is. So we all handled it very, very well. And at the end, the answer was owl poop. So the owl digested everything except the feathers and the bones, and that's what we were handling all the time. Then one of the evening tours, she said, just shine your flashlight into the bushes. And it was just like a sea of stars in there. So many little white dots. Well, those are spider eyes coming back at you. And so they had just a lot of rural things. I can't remember all the things we did, but that's still a very nice area of dark sky and nature also.
Thank you, Mary AE4BX. Mary, when I did the CQ Worldwide contest in Middle Caicos, which is I don't know if it's the largest island, but there's only like 200 people that live on it because it doesn't have a deep water port. You have to go from Providenciales to North Caicos to Middle Caicos. And being on there, we were operating the contest and had somebody knock on our door, come in. And it was somebody that was a ham. He was doing astrophotography there. That's the whole reason.
Yeah.
He was there to record the night sky, photography-wise. So that is another popular venue. I know about being ecotourism or centric by definition, but certainly we have an area of low light pollution, and being in serenity can be very popular. So is there anyone on 20 meters here? This is Whiskey Bravo 5 Delta. They would like to tell us about your travels and where you think it might have been ecotourism. make your call to Whiskey Bravo 5 Delta on 20 meters. Okay, no one heard on 20 meters. Let's move on. Thank you for all the wonderful participation and ideas. Let's evaluate your travels in the context of the following slides. And for those of you that have been to Costa Rica, should find that to be very entertaining. So what about the physical health benefits of ecotourism for the visitors? So this is AI generated. I didn't go to find the source. The increase in outdoor activity can give a 30% reduction in heart disease risk, according to AI. So for individuals that are regularly engaging in outdoor physical activity through uh, ecotourism. So I'm not sure if that's from an advertisement for a site or not, because I don't know how to define what regular engaging in outdoor physical activity through ecotourism is, because when you're doing ecotourism, by definition, unless you're in that area full time, I don't think that's being regular. Exposure to the environments. What about the immune system? Does exposure to natural environment boost your immune function, helping your body to fight infections and reduce inflammations? Because this is AI generated slides. So from the argument again, are you there long enough to help your immune system? What about your cardiovascular system? Is time in forest and green spaces lower the blood pressure and cortisol, supporting heart health and stress reduction? Of course, both of those two things can be done right here in the United States as well. So you don't have to travel abroad for that kind of ecotourism. Look at POTA now, Parks on the Air. That encourages amateurs to get off their chairs, get away from their radios, go into forests and state parks and national parks, and hopefully pick a quieter area to enjoy and maybe get some of those health benefits, because people will usually get on for about an hour, do their POTA activities, their parks on the air activities, and they enjoy the parks. If you're bringing a spouse along, you're going to have a quick divorce unless you're both amateurs. Respiratory system, in natural settings, can they enhance health by reducing exposure to urban pollutants and improve your lung function? Well, again, it's nice to hear from AI generated that they considered that. And that might be true if you had enough exposure, but I don't think being in a city and being exposed to the local environment for 99% of your life is going to get too much relief. But certainly if you're having a problem, and there's individuals that have issues that do move to different locations because of the environments, move to a more remote saltwater area, for example, to help clean out and get away from pollen exposures. And what about reducing sedentary lifestyles? Well, when you go on a trip, at the beginning, you're probably doing a lot of work trying to get ready for the trip, doing digital devices. And then you get to an area that perhaps you have to give up the digital devices, and you start to be engaged in ecotourism, actively participating in hiking, wildlife exploration, and outdoor activities. And the physical challenges, sustained movement and physical exertion during the ecotourism experiences can benefit you. There's different levels of experiences, and obviously, if you have limitations physically, you're not going to do the same things as hiking up mountains. Seniors might be a little bit different depending upon the individual. Never discount age as a limitation. It's more health related. So the immediate benefits, they improve your mood and energy and physical health during the trip. The question is, what happens after the trip? Do you maintain the higher level activity when you return home? And is there a long-term change of sedentary behavior and lasting lifestyle improvements? That's the nice thing about that Parks on the Air. When you get back home, and you just start planning your next Parks on the Air, because they're usually convenient trips, often day trips that you can take if you're an amateur radio operator. If you like to hike and plan hikes, there's all kinds of apps that you say not ham radio related, all kinds of activities, mountain climbing, hikes, forests. Those all can be part of a long-term change if you catch the bug and get interested in it. So there's mental and emotional health advantages. We have Chip with us, a psychiatrist, and we'll let Chip talk about them a little bit. Chip, there's an AI-generated slide about reduced stress and some of the relaxation, the physiological, psychological, and environmental effects. Would you like to talk about this from a psychiatric standpoint, N5RTF, AA4F. I'll go ahead and take the mic.
Yeah, of course, I think most of you know I travel less than anybody that's on this Zoom meeting or on the air right now. Hardly ever leave home, but my home is actually in the middle of a 25,000 acre national wildlife refuge. So if I go more than a couple of hundred yards in any direction, I'm in a wildlife refuge of saltwater habitat, which has all sorts of waterfowl, many different birds, and 50 different species of fish, including manatees, lots of crabs, just an amazing area. And it's once you go by boat or even walk, it's utterly quiet except for the sounds of the birds and the insects. Very peaceful, very wonderful. I can see more wildlife from my back porch than most people can in a week from their usual neighborhoods. So it's for me, it's very pleasant, and you know, I firmly believe that it's good for people to get out in nature, touch a tree every once in a while, and and get back to your hunter-gatherer roots, if only for a little while. This is N5RTF.
Yeah, thank you, Chip, N5RTF. Chip, when I was in Costa Rica recently, the Caribbean manatees are also there. And I'm sure you share many of the water birds. I mean, I was on the Pacific coast, not on the Caribbean coast, but I noticed even from South Florida, the same water birds. So we have a lot of exchange. We do live in a world where they exchange. Any follow-up comments, Chip?
Well, the water birds migrate, so they go all up and down North and South America. My Muscovy ducks that live on my patio originated in Peru. Some people think they were the first domesticated animals on the planet, even before dogs and horses. But they're fully at home right here. But it's really good. Just walking outside is a pleasure. N5RTF.
Thank you, N5RTF, AA4F up the mic, Whiskey Bravo 5 Delta. Today, transmitting out of Hawthorne, Florida. If you're listening in 20 meters, I want to point your directional antenna towards Florida. Don't let the Whiskey Bravo 5 club call confuse you. But mindfulness in nature and learning about other cultures also. In Costa Rica, the area that I was at was very proud and put on some of the locals, put on a presentation for us, sharing some of their dance. And you certainly can encourage mindfulness by immersing visitors in natural settings that support attention, calm, and a deeper connection with the place. And you get reduced depressive symptoms and emotional regulation through restorative low stress exposure. Of course, this is AI generated comments, not my personal comments, but visitors often describe awe and gratitude, which can elevate subjective well-being and strengthen motivation for healthy, sustainable choices. I guess you might say we get sort of grounded. You can always go back to your other ways when you go home. Hopefully you get some long-lasting changes. So what about the opportunities for growth? It strengthens well-being through challenge and connection, builds resilience and self-efficiency, being that ecotourism often involves physical effort, unfamiliar conditions, and real-time problem solving. So navigating these demands can increase confidence in one's ability to cope, reinforcing resilience and a stronger sense of agency, deepening self-awareness and intercultural competence, encouraging by having encounters with different cultures and conservation practices invite reflection on values and habits. Many travelers report greater empathy, improved cultural humility, and more deliberate lifestyle choices after returning home again. Hopefully that becomes a longer-term impact. And if you travel often enough to reinforce that, then it's even more effective. So is there evidence from qualitative studies? Well, there's interview-based research with ecotourists, and that's where a lot of these comments come from, that this is AI generated and this isn't specific, but we will talk about some scientific studies here. What about the benefits of ecotourism to the locals? Eco-friendly and healthy food, and you're hopefully having a local community impact as well, that there's sustainable building design, eco lodges, places for you to stay if you're in an ecologically sensitive area, using materials and methods that minimize the environmental impact, such as recycled resources and energy efficient architecture, serving the locals organic, locally sourced food, having that available to you if you're on a tour or searching for that yourself. Menus focusing on fresh organic ingredients from nearby farms, supporting local economies and offering nutritious meals. We'll talk about that some more as well. Many lodges have renewable energy use. There's a lot of hydroelectric in Costa Rica, but not so much solar, but a lot less resilience on fossil fuels. So it can lower carbon emissions. That's improvements for the locals. And health and satisfaction benefits local populations to support their economies, but sustainably with care can possibly limit the negative outcomes and prevent them and not address them before they occur, because the potential exists. I mean, there's a difference between a primary rainforest, one that's not touched by human activity, and a secondary rainforest, one that has been, whether it's been through fire or being cut, and then reestablishing it. But obviously, you want that perfect mix of going somewhere where there's secondary rainforest ones that you can visit, but yet that's a small portion. It helps the fun of being able to put those primary rainforests that are untouched by human hand aside. And being in Costa Rica, just some of the wildlife that I saw there that would have attracted me to visit. We saw toucans, and I saw them from a lodge just over the pool, actually, when I was in Saraquipi, up in the rainforest area, in the mountains. And then I also saw wildlife at tourist destinations that were the lodge that we stayed, which was eco-friendly, but put out fruit for the birds so that you'd be able to observe them. There's also nature parks that do the same. So they attract different birds for people that are into birding. There's also tours of rivers. They have crocodiles and do such in a way that control the environment. Macaws, we'll talk about the birds, macaws in particular, and there's special research and benefit in Costa Rica. Also, there's ocean kayaking or kayaking in a controlled environment. So if you do a tour, you're an eco-friendly agency, you're going to have those eco-friendly experiences. On the nature park, there's areas in Costa Rica where previously they may have been used for not so eco-friendly. And you may have put in a palm plantation, for example. And if that palm plantation went under, then there's one property we went to, and I don't remember how many acres, became a preserve where he just had local plants instead, and is living off the ecotourism. Why there? He had those areas for birds. He had hummingbird feeders up, and the visitors were given demonstrations. Happened to be on that same property that one of the bus drivers, who were looking for sloths, and he saw one up in the trees, and we were able to get close-up images. And we got an added plus because the sloth that we saw had a baby in its arms. And that was a special opportunity. At the lodge in the rainforest, we also had, not only did we see bats under the eaves of the facility, we actually had a bat giving birth. And I was able to get that on video when I was there. So there's special opportunities that give you a lot of satisfaction through experiencing them. I also have a lot of agriculture. Agriculture tends to be non-organic agriculture for the high demand exploitation, but there's also plenty of organic agriculture, and those are part of the ecotourist the tours that one would get. We went to one that was black pepper was one of the crops that they raised, and the black pepper is exported all over the world. And national parks. There was a volcano there in the 1980s, a Reno volcano. It still was erupting through 2010 when the original eruption was. It was in the 80s or 90s. And that was made into a national park in 1991. And there are many national parks in Costa Rica now. And ecotourism is a big part of having them. They're hanging bridges to go over, and they had a tour guide. And for those that are looking at the images on healthcarehands.org, you're bringing up the slides on 20 meters and watching this presentation. We're seeing it on Zoom. There's our leader here is an image of her. And Jocelyn specialized in identifying birds. Made sure that everybody got a chance to, in nature and their environment, see birds and know what their species were, and view the best places to see them in an eco-friendly way. What about the challenges and considerations? When we think about the rainforest, we can certainly look at the science and how they're structured, and that's a whole lecture to itself. But we all know from what's happening in Brazil, the challenges that are there with the rainforest being burned down because economically the land is being used for other purposes, have a greater return. And in Costa Rica, they took a different approach. They had been deforested, where about 21% of the country was down being forested from a much higher rate, probably in the 70s, back a couple of generations ago. And through these efforts, they're in the 50s now, being forested in the 50+%. If you think about the Amazon, you think about biodiversity, and we use Costa Rica as a smaller examples. This is the jewels of the earth, the tropical rainforest. The world's largest pharmacy, because over 1/4 of natural medicines have been discovered there. And there's probably out of the millions of species of plants and microorganisms, many are probably still undiscovered. So you're losing habitat for animals, so you can have extinction events, which we heard about some of that in Costa Rica in the past. And you also have a lot of different microclimates. So if you get rid of the microclimate from eliminating the forest, that microclimate may only support the species that only can exist in that particular microclimate. It's a lot to consider, not even withstanding the carbon dioxide ingestion and the oxygen production. Rainforests are in a band up and below the equator, and we were 10 degrees above the equator in this particular rainforest. So anything we could do, for example, in Brazil, that would make ecotourism more financially conducive than tearing it down and doing something else and burning the property and raising cattle. We can choose. And Costa Rica's had some success at that. We'll talk about that in a minute as well. But tourism and preservation, the strengths, well-established tourism guidelines are strong community engagement support and conservation area efforts, whereas you have opportunities for innovative technology and global awareness campaigns enhancing the sustainability process. But the weaknesses in areas like that are limited funding and enforcement capacity that can hinder effective management and development. And we'll talk about a situation in a minute that allowed for development previously didn't exist. And the threats then of having overcrowding, habitat loss, and pollution from unchecked tourism. So that can threaten long-term ecosystem health. So it's very careful for the locals. It's important to monitor and make sure that doesn't happen. I'm going to stop for a second here for ID. Do we have any other check-ins for Whiskey Bravo 5 Delta open all amateurs on 20 meters? This is Whiskey Bravo 5 Delta operating out of Huffman, Florida. AA4FL at the mic. Make your call at this time for check-out. And no additional check-ins there. I do have Jocelyn with us here, who is the guide. She's monitoring the Zoom presentation today, Jocelyn Molina from Costa Rica. And we also have Carl with us from N0ARM from Colorado. Thank you, Carl. Carl, we asked a question earlier, and I didn't see you at the time when Have you been to any areas that you would consider to be on your travels ecotourism, Carl? Would you like to offer a little bit of input? And zero ARN, Whiskey Bravo 5 Delta. Unmute, Carl, unmute, unmute.
There we go. We'll try that.
Okay,
You know, I really can't respond to the ecotourism. I'm not a world traveler. Been to Europe, been to Mexico, and that's about it for me there. Go ahead.
okay, fine, thank you. Well, I'm sure Mexico's got their areas too as well, and zero ARN, AA4 Alpha Mike for Whiskey Bravo 5 Delta. And, there's many more opportunities, and now it's becoming more and more popular. So, Carl, for our generation, the focus wasn't really there back then. And even since COVID, a lot has changed because some of these budding areas that needed the support from ecotourism were affected heavily by COVID. And there's a lot of research that considers that, and there are long-term opportunities now that COVID is somewhat under control. But in Costa Rica, one particular early pre-COVID, very successful effort was from a professor from the University of Wisconsin who noticed there was a problem with macaw populations. Macaws are different populations. Some of them are on the central lowlands on the coast, on the Pacific coast. And what was happening is the locals were harvesting the eggs and young birds from the trees, and they might get $100 for them and sell them on the open market because that's 10 to 20 times more than that return for the people that were selling them here in the States. So that's taking advantage of the local population. But $100 meant a lot to individuals. And what would happen, and as this particular researcher, Dr. Christopher Vaughn, noticed in his research, that the populations were decreasing, particularly of chicks. And if you think about what was happening there, the macaws are smart. They're not going to stay in an area. They're in their area of natural habitat where they have food, and they start traveling to other areas where they're safe. And in that particular case was the mangrove. And the mangrove is nice for them to hide from poaching, but unfortunately there isn't the food there. So they'd have to travel back to the same areas where their food source was. In that particular case, it was almond trees in the areas we were visiting. So what Dr. Vaughn noticed is that when they were doing counts of the birds, that there were less chicks, lower numbers. And if you think about it, well, what was happening? Why would that happen if they're able to get to the food source? But think about all the effort that had to be made. If a macaw had two chicks and could only feed one, the other one was going to die. And over time, that was very obvious to him and his crew, and he was able to go back to the University of Wisconsin and some of his other involvements professionally and get grants and come back and do research and protection efforts. And by making opportunities for the local population to earn money, so instead of climbing in the trees and taking out birds, what about doing bird counts, being part of the research? So if you pay and give different opportunities, you start to have ecotourism in the end, but before you can have the ecotourism, you need to have a healthy population of the birds for people to come visit. And it's been very successful and been going on for many years, I think starting in 1978. And right now, it's the bird populations. Now, don't quote me, but it seemed like they were down to counting like 50 birds being born a year on that particular climate on the Pacific coast. And I think up it's now about 600 per year. So it was a slow recovery, but many college students came through the area. And of course, people doing the research, the locals were engaged. They were offering opportunities to be part of the presentation. There were educational components. So you would get children involved. And of course, when you get children to think that way, then they're going to affect their parents' generation. Healthy, they made strict laws and regulations. So people would go to jail if they poach the macaws. And these children have to tell on their parents, but they got other opportunities to earn money. And it takes time. It takes time and consistency. And that's one example of a success story. And if you're listening in 20 meters, go to to healthcarehams.org, to our website, healthcarehams.org. And if you scroll down on the entry page to the post section, you'll have a click to the links to these images. If you're watching on YouTube here, there's active links on the PDF files, the slides, but they're not active links on the YouTube recording. So you can still go to healthcarehams.org to bring up the slides for links to the research, etc. And there's other benefits of ecotourism as well. And what about for visitors' wellness? There's research. There's a research gate, a listing of a publication that was made. Let's see if we can find out who did this publication for you guys to look it up. It's Breimer. If you want to Google the benefits of ecotourism for visitor wellness by Eric Breimer and Anne-Marie Lacaze. You can Google that and find this particular article about human wellness and the ecotourism concept. They say the influential in the creation of new wellness ideas, fully integrated nature-based restorative experience may be designed across lifespan and understanding the wellness that brings the benefits and affecting the natural environment, providing a reciprocal tourism perspective and nurturing developing this relationship. There's a growing global need to reconnect with nature that can be comprehensively answered by combining wellness tourism with nature-based experiences and ecotourism environments, thus providing interesting and unique ways of improving human health and behavior. In the Journal of Geoheritage and Parks, there was a research paper on ecotourism, biodiversity, conservation, and livelihoods, understanding the convergence and divergence. And ecotourism has been advocated as a local phenomenon, but also condemned for the lack of precision in its many definitions. So the human development perspective, they analyze ecotourism's potential as a strategy for integrated conservation and development in rural developing countries from the standpoint of human development. We just talked about Costa Rica in particular, and if you think about the rainforest as an example of maintaining the rainforest and all those species and the pharmaceutical impacts is important to humanity in general. So if it's sometimes questioned due to extensive travel, if ecotourisms leave larger environmental footprints than other visitors, but they're already being categorized now as sustainable visitors, because the reality exists now that you can't do that. You can't have nature-based tourism. It's important to wild and sensitive locations. So rather than merely categorizing kinds of tourism or tourists as sustainable or not, remote regions can be designed to have the best of both worlds, a win-win. And you can read that article online. SAMAL, S-A-M-A-L, it's a research paper in the International Journal of Geoheritage and Parks, and it was a 2022 article. And again, you can find that link on our slides on healthcarehams.org. What about sustainable development? It took a scientometric review of global research trends. There's an article written out of China that looked at the COVID aspects post and pre-COVID. It was a 2021 article and accepted in 2022, so right after COVID, when that was a focus. I see we have an additional check-in here with us. We have Jerry in for TSC with us. Jerry, thank you for being here. I've got you checked in. In a minute here, we're going to ask for some input from Jerry, because Jerry's well-traveled as well as lived in South Africa. I want to particularly talk about Jerry because we have an opportunity to go to South Africa from the Cape Town Amateur Radio Group and be supported and have a trip and participate in some ecotourism in that area as well, in the southern part of Africa. And going back to that particular paper, I think it would be interesting to me to read the post-COVID, the competitive landscape of travel and tourism will change profoundly with preventive and effective risk management, adaptation, and resilience, and decarbonization laying the foundation for future competitiveness and relevance. That was a 2021 paper, and here we are, 2026, well past COVID. I haven't seen any follow-up papers to that research. And so research still needs to be done Jerry, N4TSC, we had earlier talked about places that you might have visited that had an ecotourism component. I don't know where you were in South Africa, but if you visited the Cape Town area or anywhere else in South Africa, I know you were there a while ago. What do you think about the potential for South Africa to have ecotourism? And do you know anything about them currently having that? So let me turn the mic over to N4TSC. Whiskey Bravo 5 Delta. Go ahead, Jerry.
Okay. Very good. It's been interesting listening to your discussion. I joined a little late because I couldn't hear you on 20 meters. In South Africa, there's a lot of areas that are of great interest. You mentioned Cape Town. The thing that's interesting about Cape Town is you can go right down to the tip of the continent. And as you drive down there, you'll see that there are enormous numbers of baboons, and they have gotten to the point where they have no fear at all of jumping on your car. And I remember an episode that we had where the baboons jumped on the hood of the car and were right in front of the windscreen. And so as a curiosity, I turned on the windshield washer, and they started drinking the water from the windshield washer as it was coming up on the windscreen. The areas there, there's also there are plants that are there that are quite different from what we see in the Northern Hemisphere. And as far as ecotourism is concerned, I think a lot of people probably go to Kruger National Park, which has pristine areas that are inhabited mostly by elephants, and you see gazelle, and you see what they call the springbok, and you actually can see leopards and other wildlife. And that is a great draw. And for me, what was interesting is I spent a couple of days there. There are areas where there are what are called rondelles, where they house the tourists that come in, and they created a kind of a platform on which the rondelles were built, and then they have guards that are there with guns to protect against the wildlife coming in when you're sleeping. That was kind of an interesting experience. So yeah, South Africa has quite a bit of very interesting wildlife that is a draw for ecotourism for certain. And as far as the thing I remember about Costa Rica is in the rainforest, I remember seeing the various hummingbirds. And I asked one of the people there why they call them hummingbirds, and I was told it's because they don't know the words. Anyway, back to you, Jay.
Okay, thanks for humming that comment in there, Jerry N4TSC. Well, Jerry, this morning I was on digital radio talking to a station in Cape Town, and he told me how much nature there is there. People come for the whales, of course, penguins in the area. And he also mentioned the nature reserve. So we're looking for some upcoming trips for Marco. Now that we're post-COVID ourselves, we can get back into these trips. So Costa Rica and South Africa would be wonderful. So in talking to the station, we'll network with the South African Cape Town Ham Radio Associations. Perhaps we can work out a way to have a de-expedition, operate some radio there, and then do a nature trip. In Costa Rica, I saw someone's building a rental station down on the Pacific coast. So maybe that's an opportunity to have a de-expedition there. And we do, for those that need to come for the de-expedition a week, for those that want to pay for a tour, then work out with local guides to do a tour with guided tour, because that's the best way to find out about ecotourism and all the details, and do it in a sustainable way where you're not violating the local health of the environment. So in conclusion, in embracing ecotourism, you have well-being benefits, supporting physical, mental, and emotional health through immersive nature experiences. Sustainable travel, following core principles, helping reduce impact and protect local ecosystems and communities. Meaningful activities, eco-friendly choices, creating richer learning, connection, and appreciation of nature. And thoughtful progress, addressing challenges, responsibility, strengthening the stewardship and long-term sustainability of those places that you're visiting. So thank you for being here with us today. The Medical Amateur Radio Council has been in existence since 1966. We often talk about subjects that are more medically centered, and of course, it's not medical advice, it's information and wisdom from many members across the world. We're also known as Healthcare Hams, and have a website at healthcarehams.org. We look forward to any of your questions or any of your comments. The video from today will be made into a YouTube video and posted on our Healthcare Hams YouTube channel. If you want to look for the 3 separate words, or it's youtube.com/@healthcarehams. You'll be able to find that later. We'll also post that on our healthcarehams.org website on the entry page. Thank you for being here with us today. I'm going to stop the recording and we'll continue the Zoom session, but we're going to stop the 20-meter component, bring this net to a close. Thank you for everyone that has allowed us this clear frequency today. This is Whiskey Bravo 5 Delta, JAA4 FL, the mic, closing the grand rounds of the air for today. Next week, there's a WPX contest, and the week after is Easter, so look for emails on activities. Thank you for being here with us.